Good day, everyone. Welcome to the second part of your first module, which is Introduction to Managerial Economics. Now, as a review, we'll talk about, again, managerial economics as a field of study. Managerial economics is using both economic theory or concepts and the quantitative approach to make managerial decisions, of course, for a business or for an organization. Now, examples of economic theory would involve demand, supply, cost, competition, markets. Examples of quantitative approach would include mathematical economics and econometrics. So, merging the two using economic theory and math to address problems or to make decisions for the business is what you call managerial economics. We say that a firm is a collection of resources. It's a collection of land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. And when these resources or inputs are transformed or converted into outputs or products and services, we call it a firm. Simply saying a firm is a business. Now, what's the purpose? Why does a firm exist? We're saying that a firm exists because it wants to earn a profit. But in managerial economics, it is assumed that the main goal of the firm is not just to earn a profit, but to maximize profit. There's a big gap between the two because maximizing is trying to squeeze whatever opportunity that you have in order to get the highest profit or income as much as possible. Throughout the discussion, we will assume that the main goal of the firm is to maximize profit. Now, please take note that it is possible that there are firms existing in the community which really do not exist for profit. We understand and we acknowledge that there are businesses that are put up because there are some other reasons behind it. For example, somebody puts up this water station because the owner wants to provide clean water for the community, or maybe the owner just wants to provide more employment. Okay, and there are also some firms that exist because they want to earn a profit, but it's just that it's not their priority to really get the highest profit as much as possible. As long as they get the highest market share, or maybe as long as they're recognized in the industry, they're okay with it. But in this discussion, we will follow, or we will observe the profit maximization hypothesis. Earning a profit is different from maximizing profit, because earning a profit, like for example, if you have a sales of like 1,000 pesos, and you have like a, okay, you have 1,000 sales, and then you have a cost of goods sold of 700. Okay, 300 is already a profit, right? Or an income, if you are, if we're talking about if you're using the terms in accounting. Or probably if your cost of goods sold is around 900, then 100 is still a profit or an income. Okay? However, when you say maximizing profit, it's trying to do whatever you can, okay, in order to get the highest profit as much as possible. There are so many ways. Okay, so while I'm talking about this, maybe you can think right now, how do you maximize profit? How do you increase this portion here? Okay, how do you do that? There are many things that you can do. You can you can play with the price, with the quantity, with the cost. You can also make use of advertisement, very aggressive marketing efforts. There's so many possibilities, and there are so many ways to do that. But in economics, we'll take a look at price and quantity as variables that you can control in order to get the highest profit as much as possible. Okay? Oh, by the way, before I move on, please take note that there is such a thing as accounting profit. Okay. And economic profit. Okay, when you say accounting profit, this here 1000, that's your sales, minus 700, which is your cost of goods sold, and then you have a 300 cost of goods sold, and let's say it includes already all of the administrative expenses, general administrative expenses. Okay, let's say 700 already includes all expenses. Your 300 here will now be your net income, right? Okay, so that is accounting profit. In accounting profit, we only consider the explicit cost. Okay, the expenses that we, you know, really incurred. Usually, there's a monetary outlay. But when you say economic profit, we are not just considering the explicit cost, we're also considering the implicit cost. When you say implicit cost, this will already include some of the things that we decided to forgo because we chose one alternative over another. We said, diba, that um, resources are limited, and so we have to make a choice between choices or options, and we have to weigh the costs and the benefits. So let's say for example that you have two options, option A and option B. In option A, this is a technology perhaps that you wanted to invest on. Option A is going to give you an accounting profit. Again, accounting profit, sales minus all expenses, explicit cost, just 300 pesos. For technology B, okay, it's going to give you an accounting profit of 200 pesos. Between the two, since you're comparing accounting profit A versus accounting profit B, accounting profit in option A is higher compared to accounting profit in option B. So naturally, if you are a logical decision maker, you are going to choose option A because it's going to give you more accounting profit, right? But if you are going to consult an somebody who is really keen on checking your forgone opportunities or your opportunity cost, it will say that you did not earn a profit of 300, you only earned a profit of 100. How come? Because from your 300 accounting profit, okay, let me just put accounting profit, you have to deduct further your other implicit cost, which is your opportunity cost. What do you mean by opportunity cost? It is the cost of or the benefit forgone because you chose one over the other. When you chose A over B, you decided to forgo B. You gave up B, right? Now, why do you have to give up B? Because you only have one choice. Either you invest on A or B. You invested on A, of course, because it gives you a higher accounting profit. But in the process, you have to give up B because you cannot afford both investments. So when you gave up B, you gave up the opportunity to earn 200. That is your opportunity cost. And so 300 accounting profit minus 200 opportunity cost, you have an economic profit of 100 only. Is it a good choice? Is it a good decision to invest on um, technology A? Yes, it's still a good choice, a good decision because you were able to still get an economic profit of 100. Okay. Now, what about if you gave up uh, B? However, B actually is gonna give you more accounting profit. Let's say the accounting profit here is 400. But you chose A for some reason. Okay, maybe there is a, like, for example, maybe you don't just like technology B, just really wanted technology A. So you invested in technology B instead of A, even though obviously B is going to give you more accounting profit. So in this case, okay, your opportunity cost becomes 400 and not 3 and not 200. So instead of having an economic profit, you were able to achieve an economic loss. Okay? Forgive me if I'm just putting E and L there. So economic loss, because this is now negative 100. So basically, it wasn't really a good choice, economically speaking, also, to have A over B when you know that B is going to give you more. So you gave up more to get something that will offer a lesser value. Okay? Now, what about if product B will also give an accounting profit of 300? So what happens now? You gave up B because you can only choose either A or B. When you give up B, your opportunity cost is also 300, right? So what do you call this? Since 300 minus 300 is equal to 0, you call this a normal profit. Okay? So again, please take note of what I have just discussed. I just discussed accounting profit. It's the usual thing that you do. Sales minus all explicit expenses or costs. That includes your cost of goods sold, your selling and general and administrative expenses. So whatever you see in your income statement, that is accounting profit. But then, if the business had a choice on, let's say, offering this product instead of the product that you're offering, and then wala yung pili ang amo ng option, then the cost of letting go of that option, maybe the benefit of letting go of that option, is your opportunity cost. And that is your implicit cost as well. So you have to deduct that from your accounting profit to get your economic profit or economic loss or your normal profit. Okay? So I hope that I'm clear in this on those terms. Now we focus on MR is equal to MC. This particular principle is what we follow if we want to take a look at the price and the quantity that will give us the maximum or the highest profit. But before we go into that, we'll have to understand first what MR means and what also MC means. In economics, you will hear the word margin or marginal several times. Margin means change. And so when we hear the word MR or marginal revenue, it means change in revenue. The revenue changes for certain reasons. It could be that there was a change in the price or there was a change in the quantity, because revenue, as what we discussed already, is price times quantity. So these are the two variables that comprise revenue. Revenue is just like your sales. How much is the price? How many have you sold? Multiply the two. P times Q, that is equal to total revenue. So a change in the revenue, because there was a change maybe in the Q or in the P, is called marginal revenue. Next is the marginal cost. Marginal cost is or MC, is the change in cost. The change in cost happens when there is a change in the quantity and a change in the average cost. Okay? Average cost is just like your total cost divided by everything that has been produced. Okay? So let's make it simple. Let's make it simpler. Just think of MC as a change in your expenses because there was a change in the quantity being sold or being produced. Now, please remember that these expenses or the TC are made up of fixed costs and variable costs. Fixed costs are expenses that do not change. That's why it's called fixed, regardless of the number of products sold. So when you have a store and if you employ a manager, whether your store sales is high or low for that month, the salary of the manager is fixed. Variable costs are expenses that uh, go together with the quantity being sold or produced. So let's say if you are into a buy and sell business, and if you are selling more items, you will have a more variable cost. If you're going to be selling fewer items, you will have fewer variable cost. So variable cost is somehow tied to the quantity. So we can now assume that the MR and the MC are just the changes that may take place when there are changes in the quantity. Okay, because although price can also affect your revenue, but in both MR and MC, the only common variable there is Q, quantity, because price is only present in MR, and for MC, aside from Q, the other variable is uh, total cost, or it could also be average cost that you pair with Q. But Q is present in both. So we can say now that when there is a change in the Q, okay, there is a possibility that MR, the revenue will change, and the MC will change. So the change in the revenue is called marginal revenue, and the change in the cost is called marginal cost. So that's MR is equal to MC. So basically, you will reach the highest profit or the maximum profit if you reach a point where MR is equal to MC. So when they intersect. In the next slide, we will be talking, or we will be discussing as to what reasons or what could be the explanation behind the uh, MR is equal to MC rule, so that you will better understand why we're saying that that you will be able to maximize profit if you reach that point. As a review, total revenue is equal to price times quantity, and profit is total revenue minus total cost. So do not use the two words interchangeably because total revenue is different from profit. Profit maximization occurs at the most significant gap or the biggest difference between the total revenue and the total cost. Okay, so let's change this one to total revenue. So make sure that your cost is lowest and your total revenue is highest so that you will create the most significant gap. And so with that, you will have the highest profit. Please take a look at this graph. Why is the profit maximized at point Q? So I'm already telling you, as early as now, that point Q is the point at which you will get the highest profit. Okay, but why not point A? Why not point B? Aside from the fact that this is the intersection area, there is another reason for that. Okay, so if I ask you why is point Q the point at which you get the highest profit, don't answer me na because it is the intersection point, because obviously we can already see that. We want to know the explanation. Okay, not just like because that is the intersection point. Sige. Before, while you're thinking about the answer, let me just direct you towards MR. MR is flat. It is horizontal. Remember, MR is the change in the revenue brought about by the change in your quantity. So MR is based on TR. TR is P times Q. Imagine that the price here is 50 because this is the price axis and this is the quantity axis. So let's say the price is here, price, quantity, but the price is 50 all throughout, 50, 50, 50 example. And then let's say the quantity is changing 1, 2, 3, 4. So the TR here is 50, 100, 150, and 200. What do you notice in your TR? The change in your TR is in multiples of 50, right? So for every change in your quantity by 1 unit, the change in your TR is 50 pesos. 50, 100, 150, 200. So it's 50 every time there is a difference or a change in your Q by 1. And 50 is also the price, right? So your 50, which is the price, is also actually your marginal revenue. So the change in revenue, basically, for every 1 unit sold, is your price. Okay? So that's why it's flat, because the price is not changing. The MR is not changing. Okay? Does this happen all the time? No, not all the time. It just happens that uh the revenue the I know the revenue, the price is not changing. Okay? Sige. Now, let's go back to my question. Why is profit maximized at point Q? Why not at point A? Why not at point B? The reason here is because MR here is greater than your MC. Revenue, additional revenue, is greater than additional cost. If I am an entrepreneur, a businessman, I would say that this is already a safe area, because every time when I added one more unit in my production or my sales, my additional revenue is greater than my additional cost, which is really a good thing, because I'm not losing anything. When I added more, let's say when I added another product or another unit, I did not lose. In fact, I gained more, because the MR is greater than the MC. But if you are really trying to maximize profit, you would be thinking that maybe I can push it a bit more, and maybe I can sell another one. So if you sell another one, let's say here, okay, you have an additional revenue again because you added another unit, okay? And your additional cost or your MC is still lower than your MR, which is still a good thing. But are you maximizing your profit? Now, not yet. Why? Because there is still a chance for you to sell more, okay? And you squeeze that opportunity para makakuha ka pa gid sang higher nga profit. It's just like, just imagine this, when you are ordering from Shopee or from any other online platform, and if there is a fixed um shipping fee, di bala, what we try to do is, as long as kaya pa siya sa shipping fee nga i-shoulder, we try to, if our wallet also permits, we try to also add more units, because anugun, sayang ang shipping fee, right? So this is also what we're trying to do here. There is still a chance for you to sell more, okay, and earn more. So even though your additional profit, the difference between MR and MC is getting smaller and smaller, but still that is additional profit which you cannot, which you can still welcome, right? Because your goal here is to maximize profit. So until you reach this point, which is why point A is not a choice, because point A, while it is good, it is not giving you the highest profit. Okay? Now, point Q will assure you that you have already reached that point wherein you can no longer stretch your profit, because your additional cost is already equal to your additional revenue. Okay? And if you want to push further, there is a possibility that your MC or additional cost will be higher than the additional revenue, which is not good. Because instead of having more profit, you are gaining lesser, or you have you're not yet achieving a loss, but that will be an additional instead of increasing your income, you are decreasing your income. Okay? I hope that I am clear with that. So you try to end here because going further is not already a wise decision. So how come that there is a possibility for you to have a higher MC? Is it not that your MC, your additional cost, is just flat or equal all throughout? Why does it have to increase? Please remember that there are certain assets or maybe things that you're using in your business which may only accommodate a certain quantity. Like for example, if you have a machine, and let's say your machine can only accommodate or produce up to 100,000 units, and then you want to push further because you want to earn more, so you decided to keep on producing and producing, but your machine can only accommodate up to 100,000 units. So what you can do in order to produce more is to invest on another machine. And when you invest on another machine, all of a sudden your uh, fixed costs, which is in the form of depreciation expense, will shoot up, right? So the average fixed cost per unit will shoot up because you invested on a new machine, but then your quantity, the additional quantity, is not that high. Kumbaga, wala mo na distribute ang expense because of the additional um, asset that you have invested on. Okay? You did not enjoy the economies of scale. When you say economies of scale, you're able to spread out your fixed expenses, and so therefore, for every unit, gamay na lang ang iya nga, or you have a very minimal uh, average fixed cost. Okay? That's why try to observe uh, the level at which your MR is just equal to your MC. So that is the point at which you can maximize your profit. Okay? The MR or MC is equal to MR rule is quite versatile, so that firms can apply the rule to many other decisions. For example, you can apply it in the hours of operation. Let's say you have this business, and this business is open in the evening, but then you only have like until like 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. For your closing time. You decide to stay open as long as the added revenue from the additional hour exceeds the cost of remaining open for another hour. Okay, so you're supposed to close at 8 or 9 p.m., but then there's an event near the store, and when the event was done, there's an influx of people going into your store, and a lot of them are buying so many items from your store. So is it worth you know extending the time that you're operating? Will the additional revenue be higher than the additional cost? Okay, so you can you you try to imagine. Okay, so if you are faced with that particular situation, probably it's best to just extend another hour if you can really gauge that the additional revenue that the new customers are giving is higher, okay, than the additional cost. Okay, so you can still extend by 1 hour, and then if you still see, I mean, there are still people coming in, let's just extend for another 30 minutes. Okay, anyway, the cost of electricity is not that high compared to the additional revenue. Although there are fewer people who will be coming in the next 30 minutes, but at least that is still additional profit. So you still keep on stretching the time in which you will be still opening until such time that you think that it's already time to close because the additional revenue is already somehow equal to your additional cost. Okay? It can also be applied to advertising. You should increase the number of times you run your TV commercial as long as the added revenue from running it one more time outweighs the added cost of running it one more time. What do you mean by this? Diba, we are sometimes surprised when we know that the cost of running an advertisement in TV is actually very expensive. But why do these companies still invest on these advertisements? It's because they see that the benefit of running this advertisement is higher than the cost of running it. Okay? So they will keep on playing it even if they've already run that advertisement for like 2 months already or 3 months already. They will still keep on running it as long, and they will still keep on spending millions for it as long as the revenue that is able to bring to the company is greater than the additional cost. Okay? But if they see later on that the additional revenue is becoming, smaller and the cost is still the same, so of course later on they will decide when they're gonna stop. And the best time to stop is when you realize that when their additional revenue is almost equal or equal already to the additional cost. Don't wait that the additional revenue is lower than the additional cost. Another example of profit maximization is this. In the early 1960s and before, airlines typically decided to fly additional routes by asking whether the extra revenue from a flight or the marginal revenue was higher than the per flight cost of the flight. In other words, they used the rule marginal revenue is equal to total cost per quantity, which means that they will only make another flight if the MR is equal or maybe greater than the total cost, not the marginal cost. Okay? Remember what we mentioned earlier. Profit maximization follows MR is equal to MC and not TC. Then, Continental Airlines broke from the norm and started running flights even when the added revenues were below average cost. Remember that average cost is based on total cost. So average cost is basically like total cost for each flight divided by the number of flights. So that is average cost. It's not based on marginal cost. The other airlines thought Continental was crazy, but Continental made huge profits because they were thinking, why would you make another flight when your MR was lower than your total cost? You spent on pilot salaries, you spent on jet fuel, you spent on terminal fee, okay, parking, you spent on a lot of selling general and administrative expenses. And why is it that you decided to still have another flight when that flight is gonna bring you lesser additional revenue compared to the total cost, okay, of running a flight? So they thought that Continental was making a huge mistake, but in that particular decision, Continental made a lot of profits, and eventually the other carriers followed. They realized that there is something wrong with the MR is equal to TC of principle. The per flight cost consists of variable costs. I mentioned earlier that TC is made up of fixed cost plus variable cost, right? The variable costs will include the jet fuel and the pilot salaries, and those are very relevant to the decision about whether to run another flight. You just have to ensure that the variable cost when you run another flight, you'll have to spend again for fuel, you have to pay for the pilot salaries, you'll have to also pay the salaries of the cabin crew. So that will be your maybe if their salaries are fixed, maybe you will have other variable expenses that you're going to be incurring as you run another flight. But when you also run a flight, you will be incurring fixed costs, and the examples of these expenses are the terminal space rental, general and administrative expenses, and so on. And these fixed costs will not increase whether you run more or fewer flights, right? So why not take that opportunity to have a higher income, a higher profit by having more flights? Because anyway, what will increase will not be the TC, but it will just be the VC, the variable cost. So Continental Airlines followed the MR is equal to MC rule. It just tried to ensure that as long as the additional revenue is not lesser than the marginal cost, it can keep on adding more and more flights. Because anyway, the MC is not based on the fixed costs and the variable costs. The MC only increases, and the increase in the MC comes from the variable cost in the case of Continental Airlines. Okay? These costs do not change with an increase in the number of flights, and therefore they are not relevant to that decision. So this is how Continental Airlines was able to maximize its profit. MR is equal to MC rule also has its limitations. The first one is real world data. In a real world, it is not easy to know exactly your MR and MC of the last product sold, especially if you have so many products and that you cannot keep track of the last MC and last MR. It is also difficult for firms to know the price elasticity of demand for their goods, which determines the marginal revenue. Okay, so what is elasticity? This is just a very short discussion about elasticity or price elasticity of demand. We will have a different module solely dedicated in discussing price elasticity and the other forms of elasticity. Elasticity is sensitivity. Sensitivity of what? Sensitivity of the quantity of demand or quantity demanded to a change in one variable. Let's say if it's price, elasticity of demand is the sensitivity of your quantity demanded to a change in price. Okay? Remember the law of demand that you have learned in your microeconomics class. When there is an increase in the price, we expect that there will be fewer quantities being demanded. People will buy less if the price is high. People will buy more if the price is lower. Okay? Assuming that all the other factors are constant. That is the law of demand. And elasticity is a measure of sensitivity because let's say, for example, we cannot expect that if the price changes by 10%, there will also be a change in the QD by 10%. It's not always the case, right? It's possible that you change your price by 10% and then the QD changed by 5% only. Or if you change the price by 10%, the QD changed by 100%. Okay? So this is the sensitivity. So it can be that the QD is not sensitive or just somehow sensitive or very sensitive. That is price elasticity of demand. And by looking into price elasticity of demand, you will know whether it is good for you to increase your price or decrease your price in order to get the highest profit. It's not always increasing your profit or getting the highest profit doesn't mean that you always have to increase your price all the time. Because if we are to look at the law of demand, if you increase the price, there is a possibility that your quantity demanded, ang sales mo manubo, it will go down. Okay? So increasing the price may not always be the best option if you want to increase your or maximize your profit. Okay? And if you decrease the price, yes, it is possible that you will be able to sell more, but it still depends on whether the increase in your QD is able to cover up, okay, whatever losses that you were able to incur when you decrease your P. So it's all about sensitivity. Okay? It's good, it's good. Let's say, you increase your price by 50%. That's nice. That's only nice if the quantity demanded will decrease, but the decrease is just around 40%. Okay? Because if your price increases by 50% and your QD decreases by 40%, it means that you are in a win situation because you will have a higher revenue. Not yet the profit, okay? Just revenue. And if you decrease your price, this is only good if you decrease your price, let's say by 10%, but then your QD increased and soared to 70%, 20%, 30%. Okay? That's good. However, if the opposite happens, let's say you increase your price by 50%, but the QD drop by 80%, that's not nice. or you decrease your price by 10%, assuming that you're going to be able to sell a lot, but then your QD only increased by 5%, that's also not nice. Okay, so you really have to look at price elasticity in also making decisions para you can increase your profit. The second limitation is competition. The use of the profit maximization rule also depends on how other firms react. If you increase your price and other firms may follow, demand may be inelastic. Okay? But if you're the only firm to increase the price, demand will be elastic. Or let's say that there are so many of you selling. You are firm A, firm B, firm C, firm D. If firm A realizes that for it to get the highest profit, it has to increase the price. Okay, and it increases the price. And if it's the only one increasing the price and everybody else retains the price, the customers may become very sensitive. Okay, and the customers will say that anyway, B, C, and D are selling that item. We may just simply go to B, C, and D. And so even though you said that you realize that increasing the price will give you the highest profit, but in so doing, you discouraged your customers from buying your item, and so you end up having a lower revenue, okay, because you did not expect the reaction that they will just go to B, C, and D to get the product that you're also selling. But if you increase your price and B increases and C increases and D increases its price as well, then the customers may not really be that sensitive when you change your price, because anyway the others are also changing their prices, so they will be insensitive. The next limitation is the demand factor. It is difficult to isolate the effect of changing the price on demand. Demand may change due to many other factors apart from price. Let's say that you are company A and that you studied so well profit maximization, and after applying all of the things that you have learned, you realize that you need to decrease your price to a certain level in order to maximize your profit, to get the biggest profit. Okay, however, you failed to recognize that it's not only price that will affect the demand. There are so many non-price factors. Let's say you already apply this, you already decrease the price, but it's pandemic, they don't have money, so there's nothing you can do. You already decrease the price, but that's not what they want. They have other preferences. You already decrease the price, but then the substitute also decrease its price. Okay, or maybe the income of the people decrease, or maybe a lot of your target customers have already migrated to another place. So, or maybe you decrease your price and then your marketing was very bad. And so therefore, you cannot just simply assume that by knowing the price uh, that will give you the highest profit, that will already be the key to success, because there might be other factors that will play a very important role in affecting or changing your revenue and therefore changing your profit. The last would be barriers to entry. Increasing prices to maximize profits in the short run could encourage more firms to enter the market. Therefore, firms may decide to make less than maximum profits and pursue a higher market share. So what do you mean by this? So let's say that in your study, you found out that if you increase your price, you will be able to get the highest profit or the maximum profit. But then when you did it, a lot of observers, entrepreneurs, or current businesses saw that particular opportunity also. They saw that you're really doing well and they will follow whatever you're doing. So when they go and enter the market, there will be so many of you, A, B, C, D, E, and you will compete against each other. And since there are already many of you, in that particular market, sharing your, your clients, or the market share, or the pie, then what you can do is for you na lang to decrease your price. So instead of increasing the price to get your maximum profit, you cannot anymore do that because there are so many of you competing in that industry. And for you to be able to get, or capture your market, or retain your customers, you really have to offer a different price or a lower price, which will not be really favorable for you if you are trying to pursue profit maximization. It might give you profit, but it may not give you a maximum profit. So these are the limitations of the MR is equal to MC rule. So hindi siya absolute nga once you know that this is the price that will give you the maximum profit, it will guarantee you that you will have the maximum profit. But it's just a guide, because these are also some of the areas that you have to consider. Aside from profit maximization, firms have other non-economic objectives. So it could be increase in market share, increase in number of customers, goodwill or good reputation, or maybe you just want to provide employment, provide that service or product in your community, or maybe you just want to satisfy your customers. Okay, so I guess this is the end of our second part of the first module. I do hope you were able to understand our lessons well. If you have questions during our in-class meetings, you are free to raise questions or clarifications. Thank you.